to say that we're abolishing slavery the same way that Republicans abolished slavery. It's not the same boat, man. It ain't even the same ocean. Why slavery is on the ballot in 5 states this year. Dang, we talking about this again? Yes, folks, we're talking about this again. Why does Zoe keep talking about this? Because people keep doing crazy stuff like this, man. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. What's up, y'all? I'm Alfonzo Rachel in for Bill Whittle, who's working on some stuff that's going to blow your mind more than I guess what he does when he's here. I'm here with my buddies, Steve Green, Scott Out, it's a Virtue Signal, and back up. Mark, this is the right angle. I don't have to do that whole thing over again, do I?
Nah. No, this is a casual group.
We're gonna like edit that part out, and my mouth is gonna move like I'm in a kung fu movie, and you're gonna see me say something else, but you're gonna hear the right angle. All right. So anyway, y'all. Dang it. This article goes on to say, y'all, it says nearly 157 years after the 13th Amendment was ratified to prohibit slavery. And I mean, well, slavery was already, but that's a whole other thing. Slavery and involuntary servitude. 5 states will ask voters to decide on measures banning slavery in the form of prison labor. All right, y'all, I know what this is. Like I said, Democrats will not leave this alone. They won't leave this alone. They do stuff like this because they want to make it look like they want to take our distinction of ending slavery, right? And so they want to be the ones who abolish slavery, and they're going to do this for the prisoners who they want to vote too. It's like, man, y'all don't make an association between Democrats and criminals, where they want prisoners to be able to vote too. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. They want stuff like this on the ballot. It makes them look like they have this better name. But aside from that, when we talk about, servitude, slavery, or being made to work under like prison conditions, the Constitution makes provisions for this servitude in this manner. You cannot be deprived of your liberty without due process of law. Okay. Now, once that happens, you can be made to do labor. You can't just force somebody into slavery, like say, hey, you're black, that means you're black, that means you're a criminal. Now, our Constitution doesn't have anything like that. Matter of fact, the Constitution doesn't even have the word black in it, right? The Democrat Constitution does of the Confederate States. They do. I think people are confusing that Constitution with the U.S. Constitution, but that's neither here nor there. In our U.S. Constitution, if you commit a crime and you go through due process and you go to prison, yes, you can be made to do labor. Now, forced slavery is something I have a problem with it. And I have a problem with it, and I can square that up with the word of God, who says, look, man, you kidnap somebody for your own pleasure or force them into a market, you are to be put to death. That's what the Lord says about it. So when people try to say the Bible's pro-slavery and stuff, like, no, it's not. You can't force slavery on somebody. And it's the same way with our Constitution. You can't just force somebody into slavery. However, you commit a crime and you impose on somebody, well, then something will be imposed on you, like forced labor. So, Steve, where are these people, where they, in our prison system, like say, for instance, with Kamala Harris, she would be like the poster child for the prison industrial complex, So if they have a problem with this kind of stuff, they need to take these things up with her. But being made to work in prison, I mean, is that really... Did they really want to associate that with the kind of slavery that was imposed like back in the 1800s and before?
Well, if they can pin it on Republicans, they'll try anything. I'm glad you mentioned Kamala Harris, just because she actually did engage in slavery. She kept prisoners past their discharge date. They were supposed to be ex-cons and kept them working for the state of California. That is involuntary servitude. They had served their time. An actual slaver. So, and she's vice president now. It's a crazy time. I think this is part of the brand new radical left soft on crime thing we've been seeing, like with these George Soros DAs in cities across the nation, Los Angeles, San Francisco. Well, not in San Francisco anymore. St. Louis, New York. So I think there are about 30 of them across the nation now who are simply not prosecuting crimes. This no cash bail thing, where unless you just got caught bloody-handed murdering somebody, they'll release you from prison or from the lockup after a couple of hours, and you're supposed to show up for your court date and not commit any more crimes in the meantime. And we've seen how that's worked out in places with these Soros DAs. And so what I see here is Democrats in California and what do you say, 4 other states trying to say, well, just because you committed a felony and you've been convicted doesn't mean we can make you work. It's this coddling criminals thing. You see it with Fetterman in that Pennsylvania Senate race. And it occurs to me that the Democrats seem to believe, this year's crop of Democrats seem to believe that they can build a winning coalition out of convicts, people who think that children ought to be children who, don't have the power to legally consent to anything because they're children, should be subjected to various surgeries and cross-sex hormones instead of just, letting their adolescent issues work themselves out over time. And people who think that abortion should be allowed up until the moment of birth and maybe just a little while after. So if this is a winning coalition, I'm going to see these guys on election day. We'll see how that works out for them.
Right on, man. Right on. Scott, the article, I remember catching wind of this when I was in California, right? And just to get down to it, it was this proposal, Section 6 of the Article 1 of the California Constitution says slavery is prohibited. Involuntary servitude is prohibited except to punish crime. The resolution asks for Riverside County to support removing except to punish a crime from the California Constitution. Well then, what do you actually do to punish the crime then? And, so if you take that out, except to punish a crime, what do you have? The resolution, let me see, slavery is prohibited, and then that's it. But they're trying to associate slavery with a punishment. And if you're going to be punished, let me say this really quick. I personally I don't like to associate work with punishment. I think that's a big problem that we have in our culture today anyway, is that when you're a kid and you get punished, what's the punishment? Chores. And so it's automatically you are making your kid associate work with, so that's why I think people don't like to work. They associate work with punishment and they have a bad attitude about work. And it's the same thing with privilege. People got a bad attitude towards privilege because when you're young, what happens? You take their privileges away from them. So they have this bad association with privileges rather than just not sparing the rod and whooping that butt, and just say, look, associate something bad with that. But in here, when you've grown and those things don't work for you, you have no excuse to not understand anymore. Well, then you impose on somebody else's liberties, like their liberty to own their property and stuff like that, and you take that from them. Well, then something's going to be taken away from you and something's going to be imposed on you. But in this, they're telling us that we can't do that. So what are we supposed to do? Are we just supposed to pay for these people to just sit in prison and watch porn and just lift weights and whatnot, and they don't have to do nothing?
Many years ago, I read of I think he was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was a prison warden who said, they were asking him, why has your correctional institution had a better record than almost any of the others in reducing recidivism? Once people come through your system, they tend not to come back. And he said, because my view of incarceration is that we don't send a man to prison for punishment. We send him to prison as punishment. In other words, going to prison is punishment. You lose your liberty. Now, once you get that guy there, unless you're going to keep him there for the rest of his life, you need to figure out what's going to happen when he leaves. And the best incarceration operations in the country understand that. Part of the, totally agree with you on the work issue. The idea of work as punishment is exactly the opposite of what we want to teach. We want to teach work as fulfillment, work as dignity, work as opportunity, the way to advance yourself. I once was talking to a county jail warden, and I asked him about the kinds of work programs they had within the prison. And he said, they kind of teach the things you would expect, like the prisoners do the laundry, the prisoners run the kitchen and stuff like that. And he said, but it's really hard to talk to a guy who was a drug dealer out on the streets, and now you're training him to be a dishwasher when he gets out of prison. And he said he's had inmates look him right in the eye and say, listen, warden, apparently you have no idea the kind of money I used to walk around with in my pocket at all times when I was out there. And now you're teaching me how to earn $10 an hour. So, this is a highly complex issue, and meaningful discussions around it are desperately needed from all political actors in this process. But saying that it's slavery misses the point. I think there are a couple of things that are much more important than that. Number one is that whole work dignity issue. Number two is that these prisoners, in most cases, are working for a government-run industry. That's a problem right there. From a conservative point of view, we don't need more government employees. Now, if they were working for private contractors, and I think in some areas of the country they are, some of these guys actually get to leave the facility and they work for private businesses and then they return at night. They're learning the cycle of how you earn a living and the dignity of work. So, and then the second thing is, in many cases, they're competing with private industry. If you've got a prison industry operation that's making cabinetry, for example, they're competing at lower wage costs, lower labor costs against private contractors that are out there in the community at large. And I think that's a bad idea. And then ultimately, you're trying to prepare this person for return to society. So the ideal is once they come out of that system, unlike in Kamala Harris's vision of things, they should be able to go into the workplace and be able to earn a living and to be able to have that pride of accomplishment, to be able to go home and lift their heads high at the dinner table with their families around them, and to have confidence that they can make it on their own. I guess I would say overall, if this is going to cost like a college education, then why don't we get it to produce, to make better citizens so that they can get out there and become valuable parts of the community and leaders for good.
Nice, man. And yeah, there has to be like some sort of balance to the labor that they would do that's not competing with other markets and that it interferes with how things are going to cost and whatnot. But I'm pretty sure that there are some sort of entry level things that they could do where it wouldn't interfere with that. And when you look at what they're paying for, it's like the prisoners should know that the things that they need in order to, make it from day to day, to like their clothes and their food and stuff like that, those are the things that they need to do the work to know that they are paying for. You got to pay for that. In terms of like, the prisoner isn't paying for somebody to watch them with guns. They don't want to pay for that. And I understand. That's where we come in. We're the ones who make sure that they keep the jail operational and, they stay locked up. They're not a menace to society anymore, and we pay for the people who are watching them with guns. That's what we pay for. But they should know that, look, man, if you want to eat, you want a place to sleep and all that sort of, of course, you don't want to do that in prison, but that's what you get. You should have intruded on somebody else. But to associate that with forced slavery and use this as a political tool to say that we're abolishing slavery the same way that Republicans abolish slavery, it's not the same boat, man. It ain't even the same ocean, folks. It's two totally different things. And I hope that, the Republican voters and the conservatives really know how to respond to this and really show the stark nuance between the two of what we're talking about when we talk about this servitude after due process of law and forced slavery that is not justified. All right, y'all. So that's what we got for the right angle. I got it right this time. Sitting in for Bill Whittle with my buddy Steve Green. Scott out. Scott out. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.